Hi, everyone. This is Matt Oguz. Welcome to Venture Science Deep Dive. In this first episode of our podcast series with our founders, we take a deep dive into the world of innovation, entrepreneurship, and the future of healthcare with quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and the deep tech enablers that we have. And so today we have a fascinating conversation lined up. So imagine needing to see a dermatologist. It takes months to get an appointment. So instead of waiting for weeks, even months for that appointment, I imagine you get an accurate assessment and a treatment plan, suggestions, recommendations, just a matter of hours. And that's the future Piction Health is building. So with that, our guest today is Susan Conover, the founder and CEO of Piction Health, an AI-powered dermatology platform that's revolutionizing access to skincare. With cutting-edge artificial intelligence, they help patients get faster and more accurate diagnoses while reducing the burden on overbooked dermatologists. They're already available in 6 states, mainly covered by insurance. Susan will tell you more about it. They're rapidly expanding. But Susan's journey goes beyond just building a health tech company, and we're going to let her tell you her story. And so with that, let me turn it over to Susan. Susan, welcome to our podcast here. The stage is yours. Take it from here and tell us about your story, your background, how you started, and all the good stuff.
Of course. Matt, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm Susan Conover, co-founder and CEO of Piction Health. We are aiming really to build the largest dermatology practice in the world. And that's really to enable patients to access expert care when they need it, where they need it, how they need it. And so I am originally trained as a mechanical engineer, worked in management consulting, and really missed product development. So I came back to school to MIT to go deep in that. And I was first diagnosed with melanoma when I was 22. I tried to go see a derm and was told it would take at least 3 months to get in. And so I went to my primary care doctor, and I ended up being diagnosed with a stage 2 melanoma. So if I had waited even just that 3 months, I don't know if I would be here today. And so that sparked my, I guess you could say, interest in dermatology and access to care and ways that we can use technology in improving access. And sort of fast forward, we run a virtual first dermatology practice where we help patients get the care that they need. And we use tooling internally, including AI applied to image identification, to help speed up the process for enabling providers to quickly and accurately identify the right condition, make the right plan for that patient, and so they can do whatever is necessary, get an accelerated in-person visit if that's needed, get a prescription delivered to their local pharmacy if that's needed, whatever the problem is to be solved for that patient. We're here to help that patient get expert derm care.
Now, that's excellent. So I've come across some companies using imaging for analysis of lesions and so forth, but I haven't really seen one that has taken your approach, which is to build the actual practice. So how does Piction Health AI-powered dermatology service work? And what sets it apart from other telehealth solutions?
Sure. Yeah. So how our system really works is that we go from a patient has a problem and help their case get evaluated quickly with our dermatologists and our nurse practitioners, and then diagnose and treat that patient, making sure they get the care that they need, whether that's in person or a prescription. And so what that experience is from the patient is that they're getting accelerated care where we take their insurance and they can trust us to deliver high quality care. What that means on the inside, though, internally, and how we are able to sort of extend this as a service to many different people, is that we're using tooling inside to basically make it really efficient and easy for a dermatologist to review a case, determine their diagnosis and treatment plan. So that includes AI review of images to identify the most conditions, and based on that, make sure they get the right treatment plan that will work on their case. It also means we're making it a faster process for dermatologists and nurse practitioners to take notes, because the number one complaint I've heard in healthcare from doctors is really documentation kills me. It's so much time and effort. I go home from work, I put my kids to bed, and I log back in and do 2 hours more of notes, right? And so our system is really designed to both enable care access on the patient side and then speed and quality care on the provider side to make a practice that's previously pretty limited in the number of patients you could see as a provider in person, right? And so that scalability is one of the ways that we distinguish ourselves.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I have a question for you, and I think that's on the minds of anybody who has a personal cause or a personal journey that could be a good starting point for a company, for a startup. Of course, all of us, we think about what has happened to us or some of the difficulties. It's very difficult to take that and turn it into a company. And you're not a dermatologist. And so how did you take that and how did you go out, sort of recruit the people to work with you, coming from a mechanical engineer's background, and to build a dermatology practice from there? Who did you talk to first? And tell us a little bit about do you have any co-founders? How did you find them? Your engineers, your medical team? Because that's sort of the tough start to any sort of a startup, any company. I'm very curious to hear about that part.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, starting companies like anything else I've ever done, there's a lot of things to figure out and do and think about. And what do you do first? What do you do next is what matters. So I studied this topic in my thesis at MIT, and that gave me the opportunity to talk to a lot of dermatologists and primary care providers and patients to map out and understand the problem space. And the more that I learned about the problem space, the more I realized this problem is going to keep happening because there's a huge rise in cosmetic procedures that are very high margin Botox, right? And also gave me a lot of opportunity to connect with different people in Boston, including, right, dermatologists and all sorts of people in the innovation space and the intersections of those things. And so one way I actually met my co-founder and CTO, Pranav, is we did an intro to improv class together where we performed on stage together at the end of the class. And did I think I was going to be my co-founder in that class? Of course not. I was just there to blow off steam because MIT can be stressful. But we ended up figuring it out and working together. And that's been a really great avenue. He's been such a great partner to go on this journey with. And so I'd say finding people who align with you on your values, have the same set of values, but a complementary skill set, right? I'm trained as a mechanical engineer, not a software engineer or dermatologist, has been really helpful. I think also, no matter who you are, you never want a patient to have a late stage diagnosed melanoma. And there's a lot of reasons that still happens today. And so I think just aligning on why we're here and what impact we're trying to have is the most important thing with team, and everything else follows. How you get there, that follows, right? And so that's been, I guess, a central driving force is how do we reduce unnecessary consequences to patients? And that's a lot of people, whether you're at a health plan, whether you're a dermatologist, or you're a patient, we can all align on that. Let's change this core problem.
And of course, it's most of the time, it's not something scary. It could be a fungus infection or something that, and a simple medicine would treat it rather quickly and the problem would go away. So it's not just, oh my God, is this melanoma, or is this, it could be other things to something maybe that's itchy. I don't know this, but my grandfather was a dermatologist. And so I spent a lot of time in his office as a little kid, and he himself was bald. And I remember many patients coming in and asking for solutions to baldness, sit right across from him, where he himself had no hair on his head.
But one of the interesting things about dermatology is it's other medical specialty areas where those, hypertension or diabetes or something, you almost have to convince a patient to care because but derm is very relatable. And who hasn't had a skin, hair, and nail issue? It's very common. You don't have to convince a patient to care about it. They already they already care about it, right? But there's different flavors of the cosmetic to medical expanse. What I see is on that more cosmetic side, there have been more self-pay options available, or that market's been able to grow in a pretty big way that's pushing out the availability of medical. And that's one of the reasons we really focus on medical conditions.
So now, different than maybe 10 years ago, we have access to powerful GPUs. We have access to more powerful computers than we've ever had before. And now we can use the power of computing to try to solve some of these hard problems, whether that's in healthcare or other industries or material sciences, space or what have you.
Yeah.
But healthcare is a highly regulated space, of course. And how is the regulatory landscape impacted your company, Piction Health? And do you see policymakers becoming more open to AI-driven solutions in healthcare?
Yeah. I mean, AI is a really tricky, delicate area, right? Because you can mentally extrapolate until the world falls apart, and you can mentally extrapolate until you never have to do any work. And both, yeah. And so, but it's controversial, and everyone's worried. What if it goes wrong and we didn't have guardrails or something like that? And so, we've been pretty intentional around designing our system to add efficiency and quality, but also make sure our obviously human guardrails are in place of having a dermatologist in the loop in every case, because then we're combining the best of our current system with a new system that can augment. And so that's sort of been our approach, to just accept where we currently are and what we're currently comfortable with humans doing versus computers, versus the intersection of humans and computers, and just making that better. We've just found a pathway that's more acceptable into the world. And then there's this very big paper published by the American Academy of Dermatology and a task force specifically around AI, where the general dermatologist group of people really wants a derm in the loop in every case. And so we're kind of just play within the solution scope that everyone agrees to, and we'll just augment it, right? So ultimately, we think we can enable our providers to manage 15 times more patients than they could otherwise manage. We're not there yet, but we see that we can get there. I think right now we've enabled 3 to 5 times faster. And that's still a huge, huge impact in a field where it can take 3 to 6 months to see a dermatologist. And so being able to bring scalability is still a huge advantage. We don't need to get into replacement, right?
I guess Piction Health, through the AI system and a dermatologist in the loop, if it's determined that the patient needs to go see a dermatologist at the office. So that's not anymore a 6-month wait, correct?
Exactly. So we've already had our experts review that case, determine that patient really needs to be seen in person. And so then it's easier to communicate and have partnerships with in-person practices who are like, oh, you've already had an expert review this. We can prioritize this patient, because right now in-person practices really don't have a way to prioritize outside of reported condition, which not always a patient knows what they have. And then who called first, right? Who called first is really the key determinant factor of who gets what appointment, which is not the way to make sure we're not having things fall through the cracks, right?
And I think in some cases, if you haven't seen the dermatologist in over a year, they sort of reset, and now you have to wait a little bit longer. I don't know if that's true. There's a time limit there that elapses. At least that's just been sort of my experience. Of course, every practice is different.
Hey there, listeners. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the future of markets, take a moment to support the show. Hit that like button, share this episode with fellow investors and market enthusiasts, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Thanks for tuning in.
I mean, what I've seen recurring is that it's a lot harder to get an appointment as a new patient versus an existing patient. And so, I mean, sometimes you don't have that record, right? And you have a mole that could be concerning, or you've tried 4 or 5 different things with your psoriasis and none of them are working, right? You need action quickly.
Especially for younger patients. You were back at the time at the age of 22. So it builds awareness across the board for both young and the aging population that we have here in the United States and around the world.
And I mean, on the other side of that as well, a lot of people are worried about moles that are fine, right? And it's just really hard to do that assessment of has it evolved? Does it have all these different weird characteristics that could indicate that it's concerning? But those people are taking up those appointments, right? Because we don't have a way to filter them out without a different system. And so then the people who actually have melanoma, they're going to be seen in 6 months. And it's not like we only do mole evaluation, we do more broad dermatology. And in some ways, rashes are a slightly better fit for remote care but those are still spots that we can manage remotely and then make sure those patients who have concerning moles get accelerated in-person care, right? And so we do think of it as like, how do we make our whole system more efficient and better at seeing patients?
So talk a little bit about Piction Health. How long has it been since you started the company? Obviously, you've secured some rounds of funding. You have a excellent group of investors. Thank you very much. And congratulations on all these accomplishments. But tell us a little bit about where you are in the journey and kind of where you will to go from here, and take as much time as you want.
Sure. Yeah, so we did the Techstars Boston program in 2019, and we actually had a different model, and we shifted towards delivering care post-pandemic when we realized that there was a big opportunity to deliver remote care, especially that's covered by health plans, which is something that patients really care about. And so we realized that there was an avenue here to sort of solve the full problem for patients. And so made that shift. And so now we've been a practice delivering care for about 2 years. And we've seen over 4,000 patients. We're in network for more than 12 million patients. We're delivering care across 6 states. And I think we're learning more and more every day about the best ways to do that. I'm just very lucky. I work with some really phenomenal people across the different areas, ops, tech, clinical. And how we think about it is because we've built a model that's more straightforward to scale, we are really planning to expand to see 10,000 patients and then potentially 100,000 patients working our way up. And I think what we hear over and over again from patients is like the speed of care is when you're frustrated with something, you really do want to make sure it's handled in an expedient way. And it's really frustrating when you can't. But then also knowing something's going to work and you're been evaluated by a board certified dermatologist, that makes a difference too, right? And so I think at a certain point, there will be a change in the world where if you didn't have your case evaluated by AI, then you're worried about the quality. I don't think we're there yet. We're still very much a human training trusted environment. I'm excited for when we make that shift. Some people are already there, but a lot of patients are just more about like human to human trust. But yeah, ultimately working to build the largest dermatology practice in the world and make sure patients can access care when they need it.
Fantastic. So what was it working with the insurance companies? I mean, getting insurance coverage for an AI-driven service is no small feat. But I guess for an insurance company's point of view, early detection, early prevention is always cheaper than handling with a complicated situation down the road later on. What were the biggest challenges in securing coverage? You mentioned in-network, just wanted to let our listeners know that in insurance network, right? So how did you overcome any challenges that you had in securing these coverages and stay in network?
Sure. I mean, our strategy around improving operational efficiency is a pretty important one and a big decision that we've made. If we were trying to sell a software to practices or something that we'd be in a different category and we'd need to go through a different regulatory process. But because we're using it how we're using it, that gives us more flexible advantages. But in terms of how do we get insurance coverage, if we were creating a device or something like that, that would be in its own category and might take 5 to 10 years. And even then you might not get covered. And so we did a different strategy of having our providers, when they review cases, getting paid to review cases. And you can bill certain codes either based on the time it takes you to complete the code or do the case, or complexity, right? And so orienting toward complexity codes that allow our providers to deliver more care at scale and increasingly complex skin conditions is kind of our approach that we've taken. And so we're generally just a practice, and we get paid to see patients as a practice. And we're not trying to add extra business model innovation on top of our other innovation.
So that's actually one of the reasons why we love your approach, is because it's certainly not an easy problem to solve, but it's a very straightforward and laser focused approach to only one problem domain. So from here, do you envision any new features or services or partnerships for the company, or do you just want to continue growing to state to grow from 6 states to all the states and maybe internationally?
Sure. Yeah. So we see tremendous opportunity in partnering with other dermatology practices that may have a more traditional way of delivering care because they complement our model hugely. We see avenues for getting additional coverage, right? We opened in California, but we are still early in the process of getting health insurance contracts there. And so certainly doing that supports giving patients the care they want, how they want it. But we are generally planning to expand across the US before going international. Just you said it, laser focus is everything in startup land. So that's what we're doing. Sorry, I was just going to say expanding services. We've identified what we need to do to be able to deliver Accutane to patients in a safe way and a convenient way. And so some initiatives that aren't yet in our scope that we're expanding into.
And thank you so much for expanding to California. I'm here in California, and I know I mentioned that you guys are all the way out in New England. And so you came across all the way to the West Coast and added California, obviously a huge market. Anything else, Susan, we should talk about, or anything you want to add, anything you want to say?
I guess, Matt, what makes you most excited about AI in healthcare applications? I know we connected via someone who's deep in AI in healthcare. Yeah, why'd you decide to invest?
So I think we've invested in software companies, hardware companies, food tech, ag tech in the past. We've invested in AI, and deep tech had always been on the forefront because these are technology enablers that help solve big problems. And I think in healthcare, we have big unsolved problems today. And that's not because of the lack of knowledge or focus or work or anything like that. I mean, we have PhDs, we have all the top universities in the world and every other university in the world producing postdocs, PhDs, and everybody's hunkered down trying to solve these hard problems, cancers or Alzheimer's or so many problems. We've had some breakthroughs over the last 10 years or so, maybe 10, 15, but I don't think there's been a major breakthrough. And I think this is because these problems require computing power. These problems require these computers. The computers that we've had so far were CPU based. And so they're very good with word processing or spreadsheets or tasks which is good for accuracy. But when you look at complex problems, optimization problems, then you need to solve these very hard to solve differential equations, or maybe you're trying to understand molecules or proteins or amino acid chains. These are very difficult problems. And I thought with the growth in both AI and quantum computing, we're going to have the computing power that we've been needing for so long and hopefully go after and solve these problems. And that's why we started increasing our investment focus in healthcare, because the tech enablers are going to be there very, very soon, if not already there.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about if you're taking a system from whatever, the 80s or something, the leaps and bounds you can make with an upgrade are unparalleled compared to more incremental. And so I couldn't agree with you more. AI is rippling across so many different domains. So SEO is, you just think about all the ways it can impact. It's tremendous.
Of course. I mean, years ago, I was on a call and somebody asked me if I would invest in a company if it didn't have AI, and AI wasn't a buzzword back then. And I thought about it for a minute and I said, no, I wouldn't invest in a company that doesn't have deep tech or deep computation. I mean, of course, that's our focus here in Silicon Valley. We want to be on the forefront of technology. That's not to say that there's amazing companies that do all sorts of things around the world. But for me, if I'm physically, first of all, closer to where this technology is being created, then I should somehow try to contribute to it in that sense. And so we look around, not just here in Silicon Valley, but other places around the world as well, University of Oxford and other places that are coming up with these efforts in healthcare and material science and space exploration, space technology. But I'm very hopeful and optimistic that over the next 10 years, we're going to have a bull run in healthcare. Our goal and focus is to participate in solving unsolved problems, and so that people could benefit from it. Because just your personal story, we all have personal health stories. I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't lost someone to cancer, for example.
Yeah.
And one day this will be solved, and the lifespan will be much longer. A quality of life hopefully will be much longer as well. So that's the way I see it. However much we can do to contribute in a positive manner to that world, that's what we're working towards. And of course, for founders, you who are there, and also established companies, and also any scientist that's out there working towards that goal of using technology to solve these hard problems. First of all, I have the deepest gratitude. And second, I'm excited. I'm excited about the future for the next generations to come. I mean, I think it's going to be, I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for taking this Friday afternoon out of your busy schedule to hang out with us. Congratulations and best of luck in your growth prospects. And thank you. And please come back. Maybe we'll regroup in a year, see where the company is. I'd love to hear more of your stories. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening in. This is it for our deep dive today. Wishing everybody a very good weekend. And thank you, please, and subscribe, as they say, if you would like to hear more of these stories. Have a great day.